for people. When we came down, we were looking for bodies. We were the first group to actually make the summit and check, and then we came down, and bad business. But that was the incident that really got search and rescue going in Pima County. I was doing search and rescue before I got into SARA, before SARA was formed. I love to hike, and I was hiking with a bunch that we were out every weekend, and then there were times when that wasn't enough, and we'd be out on Wednesday nights. We'd go down and climb Baldy on Wednesday night just to keep in shape. And when people would get lost, at that time there was no search and rescue. People that knew that we would go out and hike and do things in the mountains would call us and say, there's a friend or something who is overdue, who's lost, and we'd go out and try to find them. And
it was a Boy Scout troop hike. They had been dropped off in Madera Canyon at the end of the road, trailhead, for an overnight. And the first day, Saturday, they set out to hike to the top of Mount Wrightson and intended to return to their campsite at the trailhead. So it was, I don't know how many in the group, but there were 3 in that group that got ahead of the main body. The adult leaders stayed with the main group, and when the weather turned bad, they made the decision to turn back, but there was no way to communicate with the 3 that had gone ahead. We found out later that they did indeed reach the top. They signed in the book on top, but did not make it all the way back down, where they got held up by the snow. Our team surged steadily for 2 weeks, each day, from the beginning for 2 weeks, and then called it off, and the guys had to get back to school and such. But we came back on weekends for the rest of the winter until they were found.
It became obvious that the Southern Arizona Rescue Association had training in things like building rescue, how to lash a person into a stretcher, a Stokes litter, how to raise and lower, but they had no training in outdoors, because it's a long involved history of the group, how that came to be. But basically they had all been part of civil defense. Civil defense had split, and this was the bunch that had split off because they wanted to do search and rescue, and civil defense did not want them to do search and rescue. They wanted them to wait in Tucson until the atomic bomb fell, and then they wanted the 10 or 12 people there to rescue everybody in Tucson. At this public meeting, we saw that SARA had the training for first aid, for stretchers, etc., etc., but they did not have outdoor knowledge. We had the outdoor knowledge, and we didn't know how to take care of anybody that we found who was injured. So it was a logical fit.
Got involved with civil defense, and Ray Neal and Ed Kress were the chief of rescue and the assistant chief of rescue. And not long after that, there was a bit of upheaval within civil defense, and SARA was formed. And I had a foot in each camp because I didn't know whether or not SARA was going to last. There was a lot of ups and downs, and then, of course, in 1958, when they had the big storm in November in the Santa Ritas, with that terrible tragedy about the boys, that gave Ray Neal the real push to show him that a search and rescue unit was definitely needed, not only a search and rescue unit, but also one that was well trained. And there were still problems, but eventually I transferred over completely.
The equipment has certainly changed over the years, because At one time, all of Sarah's rescue equipment could fit into a bag, which could be picked up and put in the back of the pickup and carried off. We had a few ropes, but not very many. We did not have things like carabiners. That was still, unheard of. But mainly we had a few ropes.
Yes, this is one of those Tyrolean traverses, and you can see our old original steel stretcher with the wheel on it. This was one of the inventions, you might say, of Ray Neal. We had a lot of people who were excellent scavengers, and most of our equipment was stuff that came out of someone's backyard or off of a construction site or the local dump, and it was all assembled. And in the early days, we used to pass my husband's hat at the meetings to get money to buy gas.
Early piece of equipment was the one-wheeled Stokes. We used equipment, we scrounged equipment wherever we could get it. And the cheaper the price, the better. And there was available World War II vintage Stokes basket litters. There were steel frames and chicken wire mesh for the bed of the Stokes. And if you remember, they had leg divider, characterized by leg dividers at the lower end of the Stokes. They were tough to carry over steep rocky trails, narrow trails with the full load. So some of our early members, they were generally from the construction industry. The early cadre for Sarah were friends of each other that were from the construction industry. And they had available tools and equipment and surplus cast-off material. And they put together a framework and mounted a small motorcycle wheel to mount on the underside of the center of the Stokes.
I remember one of our first technical practices because I was the victim. I weighed about 93 pounds at the time. So I was firmly lashed into this Stokes stretcher. They're lowering me down this little short cliff, and one of our members came up and he tapped Jim Harsh on the shoulder and he said, "You're not doing that right." So they're up there arguing. I can't get out of this Stokes stretcher, and they're up above me arguing, and I'm partway down this cliff, and I'm thinking, ooh, I hope that Jim's right of what he's doing. Eventually they lowered me down, so I was safe. But it was things like that. Of course, I didn't have a helmet on. As I recall, there wasn't a belay on that Stokes either. And nowadays, the patient would have a helmet on. There'd be a couple of belays, and everyone would be standing around. There'd be a safety officer. So things are a lot safer. But even though we weren't as safe in the old days, we thought we were. And we tried to do our best so that no one would get hurt.
I joined Sarah in my senior year of high school in 1965. And I had a couple of high school friends who were in Sarah and really enjoyed it. And they knew that I did a lot of hiking and backpacking and thought that maybe this would be something that I want to enjoy too. And they were looking for newer members that had good hiking skills, and so I joined up. And actually, it's what I have been doing more than anything else, more than any of my careers, and so it's kind of like a way of life.
I joined Sarah in '81, and it was funny because at that point, basic training was a weekend, and everything was like pretty much on-the-job training. And I met Richard Coons at the training session, and we kind of hit it off, and we got married like 3 years later, and we've been married for 25 years now.
Starting out at the beginning of time, I was in high school, sophomore in high school, and our Explorer Post decided to join Search and Rescue. And at the time, it was a county-run search and rescue, and Sarah was another organization in town. And I went out on my first flood rescue back in '64 down on Nogales Highway, and I was so impressed with helping people get off a roof when the Santa Cruz River flooded that I thought that was really neat to do. And kind of stuck with it ever since. through high school, through college, through the military. And when I got out of the military, I became a member of Southern Arizona Rescue Association. In the early years, it was nothing but excitement. My class counselor in high school would come get me out of class and say, "You've got a fall victim, you've got a fall victim. They called for your help." And he'd come get me out of class, and we'd get in our cars and go meet the rest of the search and rescue folks and go up Sabino Canyon or up Mount Lemon somewheres and rescue somebody that had fallen in the waterfall.
We had to have advanced first aid. Sarah did not teach advanced first aid, but actually Francis Walker was teaching the advanced first aid classes. And so many of us got our first exposure to first aid through her classes. And we had to do that before we could actually join. And after we joined, then we were trainees for about a year, and then they voted us in as regular members. So the training, while the hardware and everything is different now, the technology has advanced, the same basic skills apply.
We did some crazy training too. Riding in the back of a pickup truck and going from the back of the pickup truck onto the skid of a helicopter, which would simulate the water going. We did this in, I guess, not prison camp, but one of these areas up on Mount Lemon. And I mean, that's just crazy, but those are the kind of things that we did. Luckily, nobody was injured, and we learned a lot from it. And then we'd go to the water, we'd practice there, and we would go to the same place every year, which is now where the fire departments go and train, because when we first started, the fire departments weren't involved in any type of swiftwater rescue. They now are, and they still go to the same place that we originally took them and started training them. So it's good to see that some things, no matter how old it gets, it doesn't change.
But Sarah was one of the very few rescue groups in the country that would actually go out at night. And for many years, there were other rescue groups that would not go out at night. They'd wait till the next day that Sarah would go out. We were also one of the very first teams to allow women, and that was because women had been involved with civil defense. For many years, Sarah was the only Mountain Rescue Association team that permitted women. And I was president when I received a letter from one of the other teams wanting to know our experience, what had happened, with women. Was it okay to have women? Would they cause trouble? What problems had we had having women on our team? And I thought it was very amusing, because they didn't realize that I was a woman. And they had sent it to me as the president. We must have women. They're the backbone of the organization.
I have to say, probably the most influential person in my career in search and rescue has been Tom Harlan. He was my mentor and taught me everything I knew back then about search and rescue, and I'm still learning from situations and people. But he was definitely my mentor, and we ended up being very close friends throughout all of my college years. I worked at the tree ring lab with him for a number of years, and basically we've hiked together, we've backpacked together, we've caved together, and it's it's just kind of part of the extended family thing that Sarah can become, because there are so many people with a wide variety of skills and interests that you can always find people to go out and have fun with and improve your mountaineering and caving skills.
We have several cars go over the side of Mount Lemon before they put up all the guardrail, and it was a situation where the young girl was injured, and we wound up putting her on a backboard in the Stokes basket and bringing her up around the base of Punch and Judy back towards Windy Point, and we pretty much took care of getting her out without a helicopter.
And that was in the middle of the night, and there's great footage. Can you talk about you doing that?
It actually started about dusk, and once we got down there and the medical was taken care of and we had enough people to do the rescue, I kept videotaping, thinking this would be great on videotape. And I kind of got used to videotaping while we were doing searches and rescues and carrying this big old lead battery camera around to take pictures. It was pretty interesting.
Do you remember anything particularly about that rescue?
Not offhand, other than it was getting dark, and I was thinking the video's not going to turn out. And I found out that night that if you had the camera on close-up, that the camera would videotape on available light and pick up all the sound of all the people talking, which was excellent.
Yeah. And Sarah works a lot at night. Can you?
90% of our calls come down late enough in the afternoon that the average rescue at Tanque Verde Falls takes from 4 to 6 hours. 2 hours if we get a helicopter. But if we're bringing somebody out on foot, it takes from 4 to 6 hours, and it's always dark before we get done.
The DPS was asking for their local helicopter groups to form a helicopter team out of search and rescue personnel, a small group who would be trained to rappel out of the aircraft, to rig it for short haul and attend patients. And so they asked Sarah to form a helicopter team, which we did, and we've got now we have actually 9 members on the team. Most of the team members are capable of running a rescue, knowing what all the options are, being able to operate independently on the ground, and doing it very well because we have experienced people on the team. And it has been such a success with DPS, and our call level has been so high that they have realized that we know what we're doing, and they're part of our team and we're part of their team.
It's meant a lot to me personally. Some of my dearest friends that I have ever had are people from Sarah. I hold them in great esteem and affection, and I miss doing it. But it's a good thing I am not doing it anymore, because they would have picked me up and had to haul me out with a heart attack.
Well, I really am surprised I'm still around. It's a very, very good group, and I enjoy teaching the medical stuff to people. And I look on being a volunteer as sort of the rent that I pay for the space that I occupy here on Earth.
We've managed to keep the organization together and with our eyes on the mission and providing the service to the community for 50 years. And that is worthy of being congratulated.
Oh, the people. Just a wonderful family of people. Everything from the first person I met in search and rescue was Tom Harlan. Big Tom Harlan. He was just kind of a big overbearing guy that was there to help anybody and everybody. And Scotty Clemens, another person that's been a long-time member of Sarah and always been around. These kind of people are always there for you. It's countless people that have retired from search and rescue. Claire Dietering, a member, in fact, one of the founding members. I've run into him on several construction sites in Benson, where he's living now. Sons and daughters of people that have been into search and rescue, and they always ask questions about who's in there now. What are you guys doing now? People from Davis-Monthan that used to come out with their helicopters and help with rescues. Run into a few of those people every now and then. And they're always concerned about people in Sarah. And they always bring up names of people that are actually still in the group, from Scotty to Michael to Tomas, Francis Walker. They always ask questions. Are these people still around? And yeah, they are. And they're still
Happy birthday, and I'm glad this is our 50th, and I know I won't be around for the 100th, maybe the 75th I'll try.
Paid in gold every time I go out, and Sarah is just something that I am extremely proud of being a part of. I'll get teary-eyed. It's great. Happy 50th birthday. It's been an amazing ride. It's been an amazing party. And I wish you another 50 years.
I would say congratulations to everybody that has been a part of Sarah for the last 50 years and before, and for continuing to make it the organization that it is, one that's not afraid to go out and do anything.
50 years for a group like this is pretty astounding, especially with a lot of the original members still around. And I think hearty congratulations are in order.
Sarah,
yeah.
Try for 100. Keep up the good work.